Okay, I wanted to make a video about my mental health, so a mental health update and kind of my experiences since October. I know I'm not a prolific YouTuber and it seems kind of silly making updates sometimes, but then I do this for myself and I've been doing this since 2007 and I spend quite a lot of time on YouTube and watching other YouTubers, so it's part of my life and it gives me inspiration. And I finally feel ready to talk about things on camera properly. In October and November I posted quite a lot of mental health updates because I had an admission then. And then I also posted the film of it, which I'll put a link in the description. But the last time I updated with my mental health was in January. And since January I've had 2 admissions to hospital. So in January I was really struggling. I felt suicidal, I felt lost, I felt hopeless about the future, and I was taking drugs and I was really isolated, and I had this appointment coming up at the gender clinic and I didn't see how I was going to get there when I felt so suicidal, and things just built up, so I ended up being sent to hospital, and it was quite difficult to get admitted. They didn't really take me seriously and it was quite painful. I cried a lot and it was just really upsetting. But they did admit me to a hospital and I was there for about 2 months. And I was on a male ward, which is a good thing. And I think the only reason I was able to be on male ward is because I'm on testosterone. Even though legally in the UK you're allowed to choose which ward you go on if you're trans, regardless of physical treatment. But when I was previously hospitalised before I was on T, which was in 2014, I was put on a female ward. And when you're put on a female ward as a trans guy, you're basically treated as female. So it's like they force detransition on you, which impacts your mental health and makes it hard to recover. So it was good that I was in a male ward, and most of the patients were respectful towards me and quite protective actually. When I went there I wasn't binding because I didn't care, so I wasn't stealth. I told a lot of people that I had a hormone disorder. I was just very out of it and I didn't care about binding, but then suddenly I started caring about binding, and it was very stressful, and every time a new patient got admitted I'd be terrified of, are they going to have a bad reaction to me, are they going to be transphobic. But I never really had that problem with patients, but I did with staff. Staff misgendered me constantly and in front of people. There was even a staff member who said that before they knew I was trans, they used the correct pronouns. Once they found out I was trans, they couldn't stop saying she, which, that's fucked up. Quite a lot of fucked up things were said to me, like things you don't say to a trans person, and I didn't have it in me to give a trans 101, and I'm not here to educate people. So that's the trans side of the admission, but it was a pretty awful admission. I just felt really belittled. The staff didn't have much time for me. You're supposed to get a one-to-one and I was one-to-one every day. That didn't even happen on a weekly basis. I found it hard to ask for things. I just found it really difficult in general. And the psychiatrist was quite funny with me and would say things that would mess with my head. And the psychologist was pretty good, but then I stopped trusting her because everything I said to her got told to the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist would then have her view on it. So I just didn't feel very supportive, and then I just felt like people thought I was attention seeking and wasting their time, and it was just really hard. I guess it's kind of like the stigma towards BPD. I feel like I was treated different because I have borderline personality disorder. I can't prove that, but that's how I feel. I was all over the place, and it wasn't a good place for me to be in the hospital. They didn't really know what to do, how to treat me. And then there was this guy who came on the ward who was quite aggravating towards everyone. And I started to get paranoid that he was threatening me. And then that gave me really, really bad anxiety. And then I started having panic attacks almost every day, up until the point where I had a panic attack where I was convinced that I was dying, and I told the nurse I was dying, and I felt so stupid because I was there for suicidal ideation, and I'm there like, I'm dying. It's pretty shit. So I was there for 2 months, and then I just belittled myself so much that I couldn't write. I felt like I couldn't write, I couldn't talk, I couldn't express myself. I just ripped myself to pieces, and when in the first place I didn't feel like there was much there, so to rip yourself to pieces when you don't feel like there's much there to begin with is really difficult. And then eventually I got discharged, and I wasn't very stable when I got discharged, but I just wanted to be out of the place. And as soon as I got home, I wasn't stable, but I got by using drugs, and that became another issue. It contributed to my erratic behaviour, which affected my family, and I was quite disrespectful, which I feel awful for now, and I'm trying to make it right. I don't know how to make it right. But anyway, so I was taking drugs, and I ended up in A&E a couple of times for suicidal ideation. I had to ring the ambulance, and I've been in A&E like maybe 13 times since 2013, which was when I started uni. And I feel like now when I'm in A&E, they treat me as if I'm in a nuisance, which isn't helpful. And especially like the area where I live, the A&E isn't very good with mental health. Whereas when I was at university in Manchester, they had a brilliant liaison team there who were very helpful. So it's a very different experience in my hometown. And so things were building up and building up and building up again. And then I just decided I was going to hang myself in the park. I'd been thinking about hanging myself for ages and ages. And the mental health team weren't helping, the crisis team weren't helping. I was still ringing them, but they weren't helping at all. And I rang them up that night, and I told them that I was in the park and I had a rope, but because they're so crap, I just thought they're not going to do anything. So I walked off to go and hang myself, and then the police came and they put me in a police van, and they took me to a 136 section suite. 136 suite, yeah, where you're basically held for 72 hours, and they were very caring there. I had no bad experience there, and then after 72 hours, they gave me the option of either having home treatment or going into hospital, but they encouraged me to go into hospital, and so I thought, well, it's not going to be a long admission, it might be a couple of days, a couple of weeks, I'll go with that. They sent me to this place that does 72-hour assessments. So I thought, right, I'm probably just going to be here for like 72 hours. Then I arrived, when I arrived there was a glass bottle in my room, which is a banned item, and I don't know why it was there, and no one knows why it was there. But pretty quickly into that evening, I smashed the glass bottle and tried to cut my wrist. And it went pretty deep, and they wanted me to go for stitches, but I just wouldn't go. I was just hysterical because it was the deepest I'd ever cut my wrist, and I still wasn't dying. It was just pretty shit. And then at that point, I said, I want to leave. I just want to leave. And so they put me on section 5-2, which is a 72-hour section. So I couldn't leave. And I was crying, and it was horrible, and they gave me medication to calm me down. And then, so I was there for a couple of days, and I started writing a script based on an experience I'd had. I did quite a lot of art, and I started to feel quite positive. And I even arranged to have some work experience in film with someone that I was going to previously work with, but it didn't work out. And so I was all like geared up to go. And so after the 72 hours was up, I had a meeting with the doctor, who was a very condescending doctor. He didn't take me seriously. He didn't take previous reports written about me seriously. So he mocked that I wasn't showing... I was smiling... No, I wasn't smiling while I was talking about things that were supposed to make me happy. So he was laughing and mocking that, when it clearly states in my psychological evaluation that I don't always show emotion on my face that is congruent with what I'm talking about. And we got in this argument, and it just got ridiculous. And I said I wanted to leave, and they said they didn't want me to leave, but they couldn't hold me there, so I pretty much just marched out of the room, and I was going to leave. I went into my room and I started crying because I was just so stressed out by the argument with the psychiatrist, and that was going around in my head, and then I just couldn't cope with it, so I bashed my head really hard against the wall, and the nurses came in and they were like, why have you just done that? You got what you wanted, you were gonna go home. And then the psychiatrist decided that he was gonna put me on another section 5-2 for 72 hours because I'd self-harmed by smashing my head. So I was really close to leaving, but then got sectioned for the third time in a week. And after that, I was put on I'd been on a one-to-one the whole time I'd been there since I cut my wrist. So I constantly had someone with me, which was okay, but some of the staff were a bit, like, they didn't really want to be doing their jobs, so sometimes it was okay, but it especially wasn't okay at night, because you've got to sleep with the door open and someone watching you, but I know why it's necessary, I understand that. So then I spent another couple of days there, Still thinking I was going to get out, still doing art, still trying to focus on things. And then they said I was going to have a section review to see if I should be put on a different section or to see if I could go home. And in the review, I pretty much just talked about how I felt positive and I had plans for the future and I had goals and I felt creative and I wanted to go home and work towards going back to uni and all this stuff. And I thought the assessment had gone really well. And then they put me on section 3, which I was absolutely devastated about. And they said they'd be sending me back to the hospital that I was at my previous admission, which was where I had the really bad experience. And again, I was absolutely hysterical, crying, saying I'm going to fucking die in that hospital, because I was so afraid the last admission that I was going to die in that hospital. Like, it's ironic, I guess, if you're admitted for suicidal ideation. That, I don't know. It's my personal feeling is it doesn't have to be like, I just didn't want to die in that hospital. And I don't mean like, yeah, I wouldn't want to die in that hospital by killing myself, but it was more like, I think I'm genuinely going to die of stress, because the last time I was there, I was having so many panic attacks, and just, they didn't help me with it at all. So, I was really upset. I got all my stuff together, and they took me in an ambulance to this hospital. The time I'd spent on this 72-hour ward, I started to feel better. So when I got on the ward, I was presenting quite happy. And some of the staff were like, I don't understand why you're on this section. You definitely need to appeal that. And then I saw one of my friends who I'd made in the last admission, which was quite nice because I'd lost contact with them. So that was nice. I was still on a 1-to-1 for a whole week, which got so tiring. Although I did get a couple of good conversations with staff members that I trusted, which was quite important. And then after a couple of weeks, the psychiatrist took me off section 3 on the condition I stayed in voluntarily, and continued my treatment. But that psychiatrist I really didn't get on with. I found her, she was nothing on the psychiatrist at the 72-hour assessment ward, but she was very condescending as well, and just basically spoke at me and just kept repeating things about BPD and stuff. Saying that my self-harm was learnt behaviour, and in my first admission at that hospital I self-harmed, but it was quite superficial. I hate that term, but you know what I mean. I think and she'd be like, they don't take superficial self-harm seriously. But the thing is, trigger warning, I'm going to talk about self-harm. If you don't want to hear this, please skip past the next 30 seconds. The amount of pressure I was applying wasn't like I was just doing it lightly. I don't know why I had to say that. It was just something that really frustrated me, that she just thought that I was doing this, these scratches for attention or whatever, when really I was trying to cause myself as much pain as possible with the limited means I had. The last admission I'd had, she'd said to me, if you were going to kill yourself, you could kill yourself in here. And that really fucked with my head. And she often said stuff like that. And every week she'd say something that would really piss me off. So on this admission, it got to the point where she was I was saying how I wanted to go home, but they decided that I couldn't go back home. And then she said to me, you can't always get your own way. And I got really angry and I just shouted, I'm not stupid. Stupid isn't the best of language. I was really angry. I walked out. They've got these like little light switches of rooms that you press to get out of the door. But in this door, you have to be fobbed out by one of the nurses. So you're basically stuck in the room, but I didn't know this. So I pressed the light switch thinking it would open the door, and it turned the light off. And she goes, why have you turned the light off? As if I'd done it like dramatically. And it was just a bit shit, really. And then I stayed there for like, I can't remember, just several more weeks waiting on getting money and finding a place. And I had absolutely no idea what was going to happen to me, and I just missed my friends and I missed life and I missed going outside, and it just felt so awful. But I didn't let myself belittle myself the way I had the previous admission. I let myself write. I tried to express myself as much as possible. So after that, I just tried to help myself. I did art, but I was just getting really frustrated, and I started getting really bad health anxiety, and the medication I was on was making me feel really bad. And then eventually I finally got my letter about benefits, which was what I was waiting on to be able to get accommodation, and it said I wouldn't be able to get benefits. So I had to speak to them, and then they rang the home team, and the home team said there was no point in finding me accommodation anyway if I was going back to uni, which they'd known the whole time. So I was kind of unnecessarily there, which I could be mad about, but I can't be bothered. So I rang my dad and asked if I could go home, and he said yeah. And they wanted me to wait an extra day, so I did. And then the day I was supposed to get discharged, they said the doctor wasn't coming in. I had to wait till the next day, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that, because if she doesn't come in the next day, I'm just not waiting around. So I didn't, and my dad came to pick me up, and I got discharged, and that was that, and thank fuck for that. And when I got home, I felt so much better than I had the last time I'd been discharged. And I mean, it's not like things are perfect. Like, BPD is a really difficult condition. Like, my emotions are so hard to deal with, and dissociation is so hard to deal with, and I have anxiety, and that's so hard to deal with. But I'm just so determined never to be in a psychiatric hospital again, and I'm going back to uni in September, and I'm so excited for that. And I've just moved into a new place, and like, I mean, look at the view out of the window. Like, it's fucking beautiful, and I just want to do creative things, and I'm so excited. So that was my story, and this video was really long, and yeah, but I got to say it all, and I've never been able to speak this openly about it on camera, so I'm happy.